This is a CBC podcast. Take a trip around the world with As It Happens. From the complex headlines of the day to the weird and wacky, As It Happens brings you the story behind the story. Download the podcast at cbc.ca/asithappens.
Hello, I'm Matthew Lazen-Ryder, and this is The Invisible Hand. The invisible hand is a concept in economics. The idea is, when people pursue their own self-interest, they can make the rest of the world better off. Sometimes it's easy to see a benefit. A grocer wants more business and undercuts the competition. The grocer gets more customers, and we get cheaper food. But other times, the benefit is a little harder to see. Like when big brand names want cheap labor to make their products, and they find it in crowded and unsafe factories in some of the poorest places on Earth. But some economists say even this blatant self-interest can make for positive change. Today, we find out if the invisible hand can be found at work in a sweatshop. Does this ever happen to you? I've been there. You're shopping for new clothes. You find that great shirt. It's just the right color. Check the tag, $60. Okay. But on your way up to the cash register, you see the label inside the collar. Made in China, or Indonesia, or Honduras. Someplace far from your comfortable life in your upscale store buying a $60 fashion item. Your mind flashes images of picketers calling for boycotts. You see news reports of enormous factories full of weary workers earning nearly nothing. And you wonder to yourself, was this shirt made in a sweatshop? If only there were some way to know if your shirt came from a factory that pays less than a living wage, with no unions, with poor facilities. A factory like some of the ones operating here.
Bangladesh has attracted worldwide attention in the sector of ready-made garments. Ready-made garments account for a phenomenal 76% of the country's exports.
That's a promotional video made by the government of Bangladesh, calling for investors to open factories in cities like Dhaka. The country has seen a huge influx of low-paying jobs. In fact, there's a good chance that when you look in the collar of that new shirt, where once you might have found a tag saying Made in Taiwan, you'll now find one that says Made in Bangladesh. Other countries are looking to grow their stock of garment factories too. Haiti has a rapidly growing textile industry, with a similarly tiny minimum wage to Bangladesh. In fact, Haiti has 2 minimum wages. $5 a day unless you're making clothes, and then it's just $3 a day. Barely enough to take the bus to work and home again. In a country racked by perpetual poverty, disease, natural disaster, and political upheaval, you might think it's a further degradation to have an even lower minimum wage for the poorest of workers. It's enough to make you not want to buy anything if you knew it was made in a low-paying factory with substandard conditions somewhere in the developing world. We went to Vancouver's Robson Street to ask around. It's a busy shopping district known for its clothing stores.
Just don't buy from that place then, because some of the brand name, they have not very ethical policy running their business.
Ideally, a consumer would attempt to actually go out and find products that were ethically sourced and try not to purchase things that are done in sweatshops.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't buy anything I'd known was from a sweatshop. I think you have to draw the line somewhere. You can't just say it's okay.
I see it close to slavery.
That response makes so much sense, right? We vote with our dollars. Therefore, we should vote that workers have good wages that cover their costs of living and more. It seems like buying sweatshop clothes is a vote for people to continue to be paid as little as possible. But some economists would tell you they see it a little differently. In a few minutes, we'll find out what they would tell you to do to help improve the conditions faced by sweatshop workers. Here's Benjamin Powell, a professor of economics at Suffolk University and fellow with the Independent Institute, an economic policy think tank. This is how he defines a sweatshop.
Well, a sweatshop is a place that pays very low wages, at least compared to our developed world standards. and has unpleasant and unsafe working conditions. These can be long working hours, situations where it's unsafe working, where you could be injured by the machines, or there might be long-term health consequences from the environment that you're working in. Overtime that's unpredictable, might be short lunch breaks, no bathroom breaks or few bathroom breaks, no vacation, these type of characteristics. There's no hard and fast dividing line that makes something simply low-wage industrial employment versus a sweatshop, but it's this general bundle of characteristics.
Of course, no general bundle of characteristics can take in all of the complexities of sweatshops. The ethics of child labor and the problems of forced labor are outside the scope of our show today. While human rights and labor activists do their work to help eliminate those problems, economists like Benjamin Powell examine the outcomes of sweatshops on a country's overall development. Who gains, who loses, and what are the costs? We'll hear more from Benjamin Powell a little bit later. But whatever the academic findings, the reason sweatshops are such a compelling concern for people like you and me in the checkout line is that there are human beings at the ground level. So let's meet one of them.
I started when I was 12 and a half years old. I worked in the garment factory more than 8 years.
Kalpona Akter is a labor activist in Bangladesh and one of the leaders of the Bangladeshi Center for Worker Solidarity. We reached her in Dhaka.
During my time, the working condition was worse than time I'm here now. I had to work 14 hours or more in a day, 7 days in a week, and 365 days in a year. I have experience working in a 23 days in a row in a factory, and was able to sleep for a couple of hours in the shop floor, and had to take a shower or whatever, cleaning my hands in the unhygiene toilets. And I have experienced that my supervisor was yelled and slapped on me when I would do some minor mistake.
Bangladesh is still a very poor country, but conditions are changing for factory workers there. The minimum wage recently went from about $25 a month to $40 a month. Still, Kalpona says there are a lot of safety, fire code, and labor rights issues to deal with.
What I said, that unsafe workplace, like when I used to work in my factory, I saw that fire broke. And even today, it is happening, even the compliance factories. Even today, the workers are killing on this fire accident. This is second. And third is the freedom of association. Like even today, when workers try to organize themselves in the factories, first they're being threatened, beaten, they are falsely filed charges by the factory.
So for Kalpona, it's clear. There is a lot of room for the labor situation in Bangladesh to improve. So why would anyone who has a choice decide to work in a sweatshop? For an economist like Benjamin Powell, that's a pretty easy answer. As we mentioned earlier, forced labor, slavery, and coercion do still exist in the world. But Benjamin Powell says, on the whole, the biggest reason why people work in poorly paid jobs under dangerous conditions is because of the alternatives.
The question is, do we want our employment relative to what our other options are? Fortunately for you and I, we live in developed countries that went through the stage of sweatshops at one point in their history, and now we have a lot better alternatives because we are more productive. These workers tend to want to work in the sweatshops. Of course, they'd like their job to be better, but constrained by the available opportunities there for them, they want the jobs and flock to them because they are better than the other options that are out there for them.
Clearly, life could, and any reasonable person would agree, should be better for the lowest paid sweatshop workers of Bangladesh. And economists agree wholeheartedly. The question is how to help those workers toiling away in sweatshops. For economists like Benjamin, the answer can be found in the history books.
Of course, we want people to do better than sweatshops. So it's not just simply that they're better than the bad alternatives. We want these things to improve over time. And the added bonus here is sweatshops are part of the process of economic development that eventually lifts you above those standards. In the United States, Great Britain, Canada, this was, depending how we date the start of the Industrial Revolution there, 120 to 140 year or so process.
For years, women have suffered from the bad effects of sweatshops, from long hours, low wages, poor working conditions.
That is a clip from the 1938 film What's in a Dress from the United States Women's Bureau. Listening to that, you can see that the concerns for American women working in American factories back then were much the same as the concerns for overseas sweatshop workers now. So why is it that the stereotypical sweatshop is no longer a reality for the average worker in wealthy countries? Laws, government enforcement, overall conditions for labor, there are all kinds of factors at play. We'll hear how economist Benjamin Powell would answer that question coming up later in the show. I'm Matthew Lazenrider, and you are listening to The Invisible Hand on CBC Radio 1 and Sirius 159. Today on the show, we're trying to answer a consumer question. If you hate the idea of people working in dangerous factories and for low wages, should you ever buy a shirt that was made in those kinds of conditions? We'll continue now with our look at whether an economist could see anything positive in something as negative as a sweatshop. We've learned that what we call sweatshops exist in places where there are very few alternatives. That's very much the case in Haiti. The unemployment rate there is an estimated 40%, with 80% of the population living in poverty. And to take advantage, multinational garment corporations are moving in. The United States now gives preferential treatment for companies to import clothing from Haiti. It has removed tariffs and trade barriers to make it even cheaper for multinationals to swoop into Port-au-Prince or Caracol with their warehouses and factories full of mechanical clicking and whirring. It doesn't just mean making clothes. For the companies at the top, it means making big profits, sending those cheap goods to North American stores. Haiti already has factories that could fit in to economist Benjamin Powell's definition of a sweatshop. Remember, he said sweatshops have low pay and high-risk conditions for workers. It's something the people who run the Better Work program are trying to keep track of and improve. The group works to raise labor standards in developing countries and has an office in Haiti. In its latest report, Better Work says most of the factories it inspected, over 80%, did not have adequate emergency exits or kept those exits locked. And all of the factories, 100% of them, failed to install proper safety guards on dangerous equipment. And low pay? Well, don't forget, Haiti has a special minimum wage just for garment workers, only $3 a day. Randy Montreno was asked to find out how the conditions in Haiti's garment industry affect the workers in the factories. She's an anthropologist. She wrote a report for the Clinton Foundation after interviewing Haitian factory workers. She is also the founder of a group called If Pigs Could Fly, a humanitarian project on a mountain in a rural part of southwest Haiti. She says the alternatives to sweatshop jobs also come with their own risks and low pay.
The other occupation is simply scrounging. You scrounge, you get by, you live day by day, you empty the slop jar, you become a domestic servant, or you sell your body, you sell your daughter, okay, you sell your son. So it was a shock, and I didn't want to face it, but you get to eat, okay? You get to eat.
It makes sense that even a small paycheck will help put food on the table, but it doesn't do much more. As consumers wondering whether to buy that sweatshop shirt, this can be the real sticking point. If a worker has the choice to eat and risk life or limb in an unsafe factory, or not eat and face certain death, it doesn't seem like much of a choice at all. I asked Randy whether foreign companies moving into Haiti, taking advantage of those low wages and high unemployment rates, was exploitation.
You know, I don't like that word exploitation. I just don't like it. You're developing a country, and as the Haitians would say, you have to start somewhere. And you start with where the people are at. You've got an uneducated, 6 or 7 million people who are basically illiterate in any language whatsoever. All right? You've got to train people. You've got to bring them up. If you have a business and you're making a profit, people there are earning.
So what Randy says, bringing people up through first getting them a job at a sweatshop, fits in perfectly with our economist's findings about sweatshops. Remember, Benjamin Powell told us these factories can be a first step in a country's economic development. One of the biggest reasons is because they help invest in what's called human capital.
the main thing is increasing productivity. So things that increase the human capital, the skill set of the workers, the physical capital that they have to work with, and the technology that they use. These are all the proximate causes of economic development. Sweatshops are part of that process of bringing capital and investment into the country. If you think about what were sweatshop using countries 50, 60 years ago, the list is Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea. All of those countries are wealthy first world nations now, because for them the process only took maybe a generation and a half, because the rest of the world was already so much wealthier. Our technology and our capital, conditional on them getting their institutions right, flowed in there and created the process of economic growth that lifted them beyond sweatshops.
And that's what some Haitian business owners believe too, that they are part of that process of economic growth. Here's part of a conversation I had with a man named Roosevelt Gabriel Jean. He runs an apparel factory in Port-au-Prince. I asked him at what daily rate his workers start and whether people, as Benjamin Powell says, flock to minimum wage jobs.
So you start by the minimum wage, okay? But there is a learning curve we're going to train you to, okay? That's going to help you go up. You're going to leave the stage of minimum wage.
Do people come to your factory asking for work a lot?
Yes. What they said to me is that, sir, I need a job, I have family that have to eat every day, so please help me. It's very sad, because I'm Asian, it's my people too, okay? And I love them so much. But as you know, it's a business, so I cannot put more people than what I need, If I do that, I'm going in bankruptcy.
So Roosevelt has a lot of challenges in running his business. There's not a lot of money to raise wages, and he'd go bankrupt if he hired more people. But the one thing he says he can do is help people improve their skills. His view from the garment factory floor brought him to the same conclusion as our economist Benjamin Powell. First, bring the factories, use the cheap labor, and then help them improve their human capital.
To save the country from the poverty, okay, the first step to this is bring investment. The garment industry, they are here because the Asian law allowed them to pay very insignificant amount of money to the people.
Roosevelt knows that the reason his factory exists is because he can offer his foreign clients low prices. He can offer low prices because of low wages. If the wages were as high as in Canada, there would be absolutely no reason for a company to have its clothes made in Haiti in the first place. At least this way, the jobs come with training, even though the wages are still small.
We have to upgrade the people. We have to upgrade the hand labor. So we have to learn the skills of this industry. Okay, so this is the only way to upgrade to what we want in Haiti.
Roosevelt sees the growing garment industry as a way for the people of Port-au-Prince to upgrade their skills and their economic opportunities. But what about the people our anthropologist turned charity worker tries to help? Randy Montreno works with rural villagers on a mountain in southwest Haiti. To Randy, the problem is not too many sweatshop jobs for Port-au-Prince. It's not enough factory jobs for the rest of Haiti.
Our people can sew and our people can embroider, and they need the work. And they would just love it if somebody landed. You tell Gap to come with a helicopter and land at our marketplace and build a factory, and our people will go literally go the distance. So, yes, they'd rather be sitting in front of a sewing machine, sewing all day, and having a fan somewhere circulating or not. They're used to less.
So having a sweatshop job can be seen as improving a worker's situation. They can get a paycheck and they can get training. In a country like Bangladesh, which is further along in its economic development than Haiti, there's already evidence of how better skills can lead to better conditions. Here again is Kalpona Akter with the Bangladeshi Center for Worker Solidarity. She says some factories are better than others, and what gets you into the better ones are your skills.
There are some factories definitely who really care about worker safety. It is very easy to get job in the garment factory. Very often when workers get a skill in terms of sewing clothes, that time they like to migrate themselves to a better factory.
And our economist Benjamin Powell says that's how countries go from needing sweatshops as a first step in their growth to outgrowing the need for sweatshops at all.
a lot of that process is already happening. So the situation isn't that there's just Nike in town or just Reebok in town in most of the places where there's sweatshops. There's multiple factories that compete for workers. When economists look at the variation of wages across nations, they find about 85% of the differences are driven by differences in worker productivity. So that means workers are basically being paid pretty close up to what they contribute in productivity. So the competitive process is already working. What does this look like in the longer term? Some people will talk about a, quote, global race to the bottom where factories continually look for cheaper labor. But it's really a race up from the bottom. So when sweatshops leave a place like Hong Kong or South Korea or Taiwan, the country didn't suddenly become poorer. It became too productive for the existence of sweatshops. The country became wealthier, the workers were better off, and the sweatshop went to a place that was even poorer where there were more desperate workers and helped raise their living standards. So sweatshops are really thought of as like the first rung on the ladder out of poverty. And it's one that, as countries graduate from it, becomes available to other countries.
Benjamin Powell says it's a process. Places like Hong Kong and South Korea have been through it. He says Bangladesh and Haiti are in the middle of it. But there are a lot of people who say that process needs to happen faster. Especially on a factory level, that progression from sweatshop to responsible employer can be a difficult one. Amy Lunstra is the program manager for Better Work, the group we mentioned earlier that sets labor and safety benchmarks for factories and helps them to upgrade their practices. She doesn't think that sweatshops need to exist in the first place, but she says once they've been established, they can be made better.
We see two possible outcomes here. We have a sweatshop model that can be profitable. Actually, if you yell and scream at workers and even occasionally throw things at them and intimidate them, they will work harder to an extent, and you can have profits that way. Or you can have humane, modern industrial relations and modern human resource techniques and practices that are also very profitable. The health and safety innovation here is very cheap and generally quickly pays off. Workers are more productive if it's cooler in the work environment. They are more productive if they have drinking water. These are not big investments at all, but you need to know how to do it. You do it efficiently, and it probably helps to measure the benefits. That's another thing that can provide a lot of momentum to factories who are going through this innovation curve.
Amy and the Better Work program tried to measure the benefits of treating workers better to show factory owners that employees are more productive when they're treated right. The hope is to find a mutually beneficial arrangement. The factory makes more money because they're providing better conditions. But what if factories don't give those modern human resources techniques a try? Why not just have our governments make tougher rules, impose more pressure on an international level, force more compliance? Would that send a message to the clothing industry and get them to pay their workers more? Economist Benjamin Powell says trade sanctions against countries that host sweatshops can have unintended consequences.
As you impose trade sanctions on countries with lower standards, what you're going to see is jobs leave those countries and move to places that naturally are more productive and can meet those standards. And this actually plays into activist and branding marketing strategies as well, because often people care more, it seems, about feeling good than actually doing good. There's something called Shop with a Conscience Guide, and it's marketed as if it's helping sweatshop workers around the world by only sourcing products from factories that pay a living wage, have the right to unionize, and have good working conditions. But if you actually look at a map of where the companies are located, almost all of them are located in Canada and the United States. You're doing nothing to help the sweatshop workers. You're doing something to help already fairly wealthy workers in the United States and Canada.
So from his economic standpoint, government sanctions won't help. That kind of pressure would force changes that make sweatshops more expensive to run. If they're more expensive to run, they have to charge more to their clients. If they charge more, then they don't get the big contracts from brand names and they can't operate at all. Again, we would like big companies to pay more. Many consumers may be willing to pay more. But as reality tells us, most companies don't see their primary purpose as improving the lives of people in developing countries. So it all comes back to you and me. Back in that checkout lineup with our perfect khaki shirt for a price we like, but a country of origin we aren't so sure about. Where do we fit in? The shoppers we heard from earlier definitely did not want to buy clothes from companies that use cheap labor in substandard conditions. But would that help improve the lives of sweatshop workers? Well, let's ask some of the people we met on our journey today. We put it to Roosevelt in Haiti. He runs a garment factory, so no surprise here. Does he think that if you buy cheap Haitian clothes, you're exploiting or helping poorly paid Haitian workers?
You're helping Haiti in a sense. Okay, you're helping to reduce the 80% of unemployment of Haiti. You're helping Asian families. You're helping Asian people.
Well, what about Amy from the Better Work program? She and her group have audited sweatshops in countries like Haiti and Cambodia, and she knows the kinds of conditions these workers are put in. We asked her our question, to buy or not to buy.
It's probably not going to serve anyone to just stop buying clothes or to stop buying clothes that are made in a certain location. I don't think that boycotts are necessarily the way to improve working conditions in other countries, but expressing that you'd prefer to have a garment that's made under humane working conditions is absolutely important.
So the economist, the development worker, and the business owner all say that not much good can come from simply not buying sweatshop clothing, that it would accomplish very little to put that new shirt back on the rack. But as we said before, at the center of this equation are human beings, the ones working the lines, sitting for hours at the sewing machines, like labor activist Kalpona Akter, who we met earlier. We asked her, should we avoid buying clothes made in a Bangladeshi sweatshop?
No. It is clearly no, because the boycott is suicide for my country. Why I'm saying it is 4 million workers are working and they're supporting their family from this industry. If you boycott, that will be suicide for us.
So Kalpona Akter and Benjamin Powell are in agreement. They say, if you decide to stop buying clothing from a company or country of origin because that clothing was made in a sweatshop, you aren't helping workers in the developing world. The issue is more complex than just voting with our dollars. We can tell companies how we feel, but it takes the courage of people like Kalpona, the expertise of groups like Better Work, and yes, a little economic development to really make things better. You can find more on our website, cbc.ca/The Invisible Hand. That's where you'll find web extras like a full-length interview with the Canadian group, the Maquila Solidarity Network. You can also follow us on Twitter @CBC The Hand. The Invisible Hand is produced by Jeff Turner. Our economic consultant is Stephen Gordon. Our senior producer is Karen Burgess. I'm Matthew Lazen-Ryder.
Looking for more CBC podcasts? Go to cbc.ca/podcasting.